It was a cloudy evening on July 22nd, 2026. I was at the Rockville MARC station at milepost 16.7 on CSX's Metropolitan Subdivision. The Metropolitan has served Rockville since 1873, allowing it to double its population by 1890, thanks to the easy access to the capital. Truth be told, I was just there to see whatever would come. I didn't have to wait long. A westbound manifest led by two rebuilt CM44 ACs was in the distance. I was unable to hear what his symbol was, though. As that passed, an eastbound coal train came onto the other track, led by another CM44 AC and an SD70 Mac. The hoppers, instead of Bethgods lettered with SCWX, suggest that this could be C926, which delivers coal loads to the Winyah Power Plant, owned by the South Carolina Public Service Authority. Anyway, here comes the Rear Distributed Power Units, or DPUs, a CM44AH and another SD70 Mac. After both of those trains came and went, the last commuter train of the day out of Washington pulled into the station. Mark P883 to Brunswick, led by an SC44. The last train we caught that evening was a manifest led by two ES40 DCs and an ET44AH. The next day, we headed up bright and early to Brunswick at milepost 75.6. However, that's 75.6 route miles from Baltimore, not DC. After Point of Rocks at 42.8, the mileposts on the Metropolitan shift from counting the miles from DC to counting the miles from Baltimore, because when that section of what is now the Met Sub was laid, it was actually considered a part of the B&O's old main line that ran west from Baltimore. Brunswick is almost but not quite the tail end of the metropolitan, and is home to a large classification yard built in the 1890s for sorting and building freight trains. Much like in Rockville, the coming of the railroad caused Brunswick's population to double by 1890. As we were pulling into the parking lot, there was already an ET-44AH at the head end of a manifest M415 sitting on the number 4 runner, awaiting a crew change, and a commuter train on the number 1 main awaiting access into the station. There were also some signal maintainers doing something up in the signal bungalows. I wouldn't find out why until just a bit later in the morning. Soon, the dispatcher began giving instructions to P-876's crew.
Mark 8058, Jeff system received pass and stop indication of the EAS North WB. That's moving eastbound, 1-to-1, placing the switches in hand-throw position to make sure they're aligned for your movement. Now track condition then.
And it started pulling into the station to pick up passengers. While it was pulling in, M415 had its old crew picked up. Now all it needed was another crew in their place. Shortly after, P-876 departed the station and began on its journey to the capital. Funnily enough, the consist assigned to P-876 was the same consist that was assigned to P-883 the day before, only this time the SC-44, number 82, was pushing the train instead of pulling. Next up was I-117, an intermodal from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania heading to Bedford Park, Illinois, just outside of Chicago, with a train of intermodal shipping containers. At the head end was an ES-40DC and behind it an ES-44AH. Not just any ES-44, it was 1871, one of CSX's fallen flag heritage units, this one wearing the colors of the old Atlantic Coastline Railroad, which served much of the Southeast and several mergers later is now one of the great fallen flags that make up today's CSX. A minute later came Mark P-878 from Martinsburg, West Virginia, being pushed by an MP-36PH-3C. Soon I-117 started slowing to a stop and began reversing back into the yard.
And make the change in the box, whatever they are. Right. Unless it's the 2 shop cars that shows on the list, don't take those.
That banging sound is the track workers fixing up something by the North Maple Avenue grade crossing. Speaking of them, I soon found out what they were doing. P890 was about to pull out of the yard and was receiving instructions from the dispatcher. One of them was to proceed at restricted speed when going through the grade crossing due to a malfunction. The engines assigned to P890 were another MP36 and a GP39 PH-3C number 75. It began life in 1968 as
the Milwaukee Road
number 2050, and after being acquired by Mark in the 80s has been rebuilt twice into the condition it's in today. While the commuter was pulling out, a loaded coal train pulled by a CM44AH and an ET44AH came speeding past on Main 2, likely coming from a mine in the Appalachians and heading for export at the port of Baltimore. While it was going by, the new crew for M415 had arrived. The rear DPUs were another ET44AH and ES44AH number 1776, the Spirit of Our Armed Forces unit. It's one of 3 engines in CSX's Pride and Service series, the other 2 being 3194, the Spirit of Our Law Enforcement, and 911, the Spirit of Our First Responders. P890 on Main 1 began pulling, or should I say pushing, into the station, ready to pick up commuters heading to the capital. While the commuter was stopped, I managed to catch this scene of M415. It wasn't long before P890 departed, thus ending the morning commute rush, at least at Brunswick. If I hadn't known better, I would have thought all that smoke was coming from a steam engine. Next up was M276, loaded autoracks from Avon, Indiana to Twin Oaks, Pennsylvania, in the Philadelphia area. The autoracks are filled with automobiles from plants all around the Midwest heading to dealerships in the East.
You guys, are you clear down there to leave on that end? Up in Rockville?
After that went by, finally I-117 departed for real this time. Intermodal trains are usually fast and have the highest priority over all other trains on the railroad, except for passenger trains. In fact, the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railway ran an intermodal service called the Super C, which they marketed as the world's fastest freight train, for it regularly ran from Chicago to Los Angeles in less than 40 hours. I-117 definitely wasn't being the world's fastest freight train when I saw it. Today, intermodal trains almost exclusively consist of containers double-stacked in well cars, but the first intermodal trains consisted of truck trailers on flat cars. This sort of service was known as TOFC for trailer on flat car, but also gained the more affectionate name piggyback. I-117 admits all shipping containers had a lone UPS trailer piggybacking a spine car. It also had a good few amount of shipping containers placed on flat cars as opposed to the well cars. We were having a conversation with a gentleman on a bicycle when finally M415 departed with its new crew on the next leg of its long journey from Cumberland, Maryland to Rocky Mount, North Carolina.
Have a good day.
Yeah, number. We're ready to get up out of here. Okay.
One thing I love about Manifest is the great variety of cars they have. On one train you can find gondolas, hoppers, center beam flats, tank cars, and of course, boxcars. In addition to that, you can find equipment from railroads and companies situated all over the country, even those that no longer exist, like these hoppers in Burlington Northern's Cascades Green Paint. Anyways, there's like 15 minutes of this train left, so I'm going to speed things up a bit. After this train went by, the signal maintainers had informed the dispatcher that the North Maple Avenue grade crossing had whatever defect rectified and trains were now allowed to run at timetable speed through it instead of restricted. As if to prove that, B774 from Baltimore to Chicago came zooming past on Main 1, consisting of a CM44AH and an ES44AH, pulling several empty ethanol tank cars. At the time, it felt like it was zooming past. In this video, not so much. Oh well. Direct Directly in front and behind all the tankers are grain hoppers acting as buffers between the locomotives and tankers to make sure the engines aren't close to whatever hazardous materials they'll be carrying. In only a couple hours, we had probably seen enough equipment to fill up a railroad museum. Now seemed like a good time to head up the road and get the breakfast that I should have had way earlier. When we came back, we chose a spot by the north side of the yard with a nice view of the tracks. An old interlocking tower had been moved here, previously occupying the space that this signal bungalow now takes. A manifest started pulling out of the yard, this being M416, the westbound equivalent of M415, which we saw earlier. Before the end of train device was anywhere near, my SD card had run out. Good thing I had brought a spare. Truth be told, the train action had slowed down quite a bit compared to the first couple of hours. Thankfully, though, where we were standing had a nice view of the west end of the B yard as well as the Mark Valley yard where Mark stores its passenger equipment. There were several single-level Nippon Shiro coaches and a couple of Bombardier multi-levels. But whatever is that rubbish? The rubbish turns out to be a Pullman standard gallery car. Mark once had a whole fleet of them, which they got second-hand from Metra, the commuter railroad in the greater Chicago region. They were used from 2004 to 2015 when they were replaced by the Bombardier multi-levels. Supposedly they were returned to Metra, but evidently at least one has stayed behind. I also got a view, not a very good one, of the yard job Y101 being worked by a C40-8W number 7816. Based on this much better picture that I've taken recently, it looks like it's recently been taken out of a deadline. Oh, wait, it was. Here's a picture of it in 2022 in the deadline at the Cumberland shops. CSX has been taking a lot of engines out of retirement in recent years. Anyways, here's the shot of a high railer. They're sort of the modern equivalent of hand cars and rail speeders. Their purpose is mostly for transporting MOW crews. Anyways, here came another train hauled by two ES-44AHs. At the time, I thought it was an empty coal train, but it was actually one of several aggregates trains nicknamed Rock Runners that go to and from a quarry in Millville, West Virginia. This is specifically B455, which takes empty stone hoppers from La Plata, Maryland to get loaded in Millville. was an actual empty coal train hauled by an ET-44AH and an ES-44AH. Then came M277, empty autoracks from Twin Oaks to Louisville, Kentucky, hauled by an ET-44AH, and an ES-44AH mid-DPUing. A lot of the trains we saw today have been hauled by locomotives of GE's Evolution series, or GEVOs as most rail fans know them as. These initially came out in 2003 and continue to be built today, now by Wabtec instead of GE. You pretty much can't go rail fanning on any Class 1 freight railroad without seeing one of these. They're like Toyota Camrys, evidently good, reliable engines, or else they wouldn't be so common. But because they're so common, they're not really interesting at all. Anyways, next up was I-135, a maritime intermodal from Suffolk, Virginia to Chicago, Illinois, led by a CM44AC.
Bring it down to the east end, this 135 will have everything else blocked. What is it? Bring it down into the 6 run.
Much like I-117 did this morning, it came to a stop on the South Maple Avenue grade crossing, ready to reverse.
Yep. Thank you.
But before he did that, there was a light engine movement on the other side of the yard. A lone CM44AH was making his way from Main 1 through the number 3 runner and into the south side of the yard. While he was doing that, I-135 began its reverse shove back into the yard to pick up some more cars. Here comes another rock runner on Main 1. B450 from Millville to Bladensburg, Maryland and back, led by two ES44AHs. Finally, I-135 departed for real this time. Then my camera battery was about to die, so I spent a few minutes inside the station charging it. I was able to get it charged in time to catch a shot of the mid-DPU in ET44AH. The T in ET44AH means Tier 4. You can tell a Tier 4 GEVO from any other kind because they have larger radiators, which allows it to be compliant with the EPA's Tier 4 emission standards. For a while, there was this train on the number 3 runner sorta just sitting there. Never came close enough for me to see what the number was on the lead locomotive. After consulting a friend, I was told it was probably G111, a loaded grain train from Cicero, Illinois to Brunswick serving Miller Milling. I don't know for a fact that's what it was, though. Oh well. Anyway, here comes P873, the first of the evening rush of commuter trains, led by an MP36, ending its long journey from Washington. As the passengers on that train were disembarking, a manifest went by led by two SD-70 Macs. P-873's consist then did a reverse shove into the yard, crossing over from main 1 into the number 3 runner. I thought my 10 hours of railfanning were now done, but as we were getting into the car, we heard a horn blaring, and I was able to catch a photo of PO30, Amtrak's eastbound Floridian from Chicago to Miami, led by a P42DC and an ALC42, running about 5 hours late. That's the kind of Amtrak service I've come to know and love. Interestingly, the Floridian, despite being trains 40 and 41 to Amtrak, still uses the former symbols of the Capital Limited, i.e. PO29 and PO30, when running west of DC, and south of DC uses the former Silver Stars PO91 and PO92 symbols, as the Floridian is only supposed to be a temporary combination of the aforementioned trains. Now, my 10 hours of railfanning were truly complete. In that time, we got to see a whole variety of trains and enough equipment to fill up a Class 3 railroad. Any rail fans in central Maryland really ought to take a visit to Brunswick because there's no telling what you'll see. Until next time, this is the Met Sub Spotter, departing this video at 15 minutes and 3 seconds. Or at least that's how long the voiceover is. I'm pretty sure the actual video is going to be like 45 minutes. Goodbye.